The Penrith fans rise to their feet.
Still 2 more plays left. Can they extend their lead here? Oh, how slick is that? Incredible hand. And Karat.
Positive news for Hamoli Olakwati. You can see him back here on the sideline. They were able to put the shoulder back in, so he will have to get assessed.
You've informed Danica, stand by. Here goes Burton, hold the phone. And he's 10 metres out. Manly scrambling on their left-hand side. That's where the Bulldogs go. Oh, the hands of Crichton. He is a marvel.
Phil Gould has delivered some sobering news to long-suffering Dogs fans.
Yeah, I don't think the club's gone backwards. I'm certain that hasn't happened. The first grade team's very vulnerable at the moment. Our roster is vulnerable. We couldn't afford the type of injuries that we've had. That's just sort of worn us down over a period of time. That's not going to change either. This year was always going to be a difficult year, and it's going to be painful for another couple of years yet. We just need to make sure this club doesn't go through this type of period again.
Serraldo
To the Bulldogs.
There's just so many people in the game willing to tell you this is a done deal. It is happening.
Why wouldn't it be out there, Reedy? Why wouldn't Canterbury be confirming that?
Gus has told us that Trent has stood down. He was the one that quit today as coach of the Canterbury Bulldogs.
Look, it's the biggest story of the season, no doubt, Braith, and I think the drums started beating after the Bulldogs were rolled by Canberra. Behind the scenes, from the way I understand it, Baz was basically told either walk or you're going to be knifed. But to be really clear about it, Trent Barrett basically had a gun pointed at him and was told, you either walk or it's going to get ugly.
I said weeks ago, once Phil Gould got involved, it was dead man walk.
Well, you said it. We've been talking about this for 3 or 4 weeks. You called it.
They're courageous and they try hard, but I said before, that's not enough to win you the game in the NRL. You got to control the footy. Until we learn we cut out those individual errors that we're making and build pressure and come up with the right kick at the right time. Well, we're going to be. I sound like a broken record with the press conferences. It's the same every week.
Well, I do know that Trent Barrett coached the team this week. Trent Barrett will be the coach of the Bulldogs long after I'm gone. Long after I'm gone. He's going to be a long-term coach for the club.
I don't think it's a bad thing at all.
And all the stuff that was misrepresented and misspoken about, and most of it's so childish and agenda-driven and personal grievances, I've been dealing with pretty much for the most part of my career.
And the future of the Canterbury Bankstown Bulldogs is now a little unclear after Dean Pay yesterday quit his role as head coach. Pay decided it was time to leave after being informed by the club they were in the market for a new coach in 2021.
I think because of all this talk about them being the family club's a fraud.
I have to admit that performance on the weekend was miserable against the Broncos.
Guys, you're on your own now.
Let's have a look at some of those names.
So all these players, now James Graham has a little asterisk, right? Because when Dean Pay walked into the club, James Graham had just been let go because of salary cap problems. The other 5 players there, 4 of whom are test players and 1 of whom played Origin last year, were all at the club, and not through Dean Pay's decision making, but through trying to get the club under the salary cap, they let those players go.
Something had to give, didn't it, Pete? Josh Reynolds is the first casualty. Luckily for Reynolds, the West Tigers were desperate for talent.
We're underway. One of the most awaited grand finals of all time. Burgess and taken by Graham.
Guided by Des Hasler, who is now aiming to become
Heading the 5 o'clock news, runaway league star Sonny Bill Williams now runs the risk of being arrested if he takes the field to play rugby union in France. The Bulldogs are set to play their first game without him. Adam, this has degenerated into all-out war.
Bulldogs and the NRL are about to serve papers at the New South Wales Supreme Court.
It goes over to wing away to Finch, then it's gone out to Crocker. Crocker loses the ball. It's picked up by Utah. That is the grand final. The last seconds are ticking away. Canterbury Bankstown, the Sydney Bulldogs have won it in Terry Lamb's final appearance. 328 Magnificent first-grade games for both the Magpies and the Bulldogs.
The Rugby League world was fracturing. The Super League war loomed like a storm. Contracts were being torn up, loyalties tested, the very identity of the game was in flux. And amidst that storm, one club was quietly plotting one of the most improbable stories in Rugby League history. The Sydney Bulldogs, as they were officially known that season, carried the weight of chaos around them. A proud club, seasoned in grit, suddenly stripped of its Canterbury name and identity, but they fought on, quietly determined to survive the storm. Truth is, their regular season was anything but smooth. Injuries piled up, consistency was hard to find. For weeks they looked like a side destined for mid-table obscurity. They were tough, yes, but wins were scrappy and losses were brutal. They even copped a 42-0 thrashing by Newcastle in round 13, a humiliation that had critics writing them off entirely. Yet there were flashes. In round 4, a gritty 16-12 win over St George showed their defensive steel. And in the final round, a 66-4 demolition of North Queensland sent a message that when they clicked, they were dangerous. Games that didn't make headlines, but proved that this side was learning how to win ugly and how to survive. This wasn't a dominant season for Canterbury. Far from it, actually. They finished 6th on the ladder. And they really weren't the team that anyone expected to win the trophy. As September rolled around, they definitely weren't favourites and not really many people gave them a chance. But the ladder only tells part of the story. Yes, 6th place, but the Bulldogs were brimming with potential. Close losses, narrow margins, a belief simmering beneath the surface, the kind that doesn't make headlines until it's too late. Round by round, victory by victory, the underdogs turned into giants in disguise, bruising tackles, those improbable tries, the iron will in the dying minutes. The Bulldogs began to suffocate teams with intensity. Finals football has its own rules, and once the Bulldogs got into that arena, their momentum shifted. Their belief hardened, and every other team that faced them became an obstacle to be smashed through, not respected. The first hurdle was St George in the qualifying final. A bruising, low-scoring affair, Canterbury hung on to win 12-8 in a gritty performance that set the tone. Next came Brisbane, a side many thought unstoppable, but the Bulldogs were relentless, swarming in defence and relentless in attack. They stunned the Broncos 24-10. Then the defending premiers, Canberra, a team stacked with internationals. Many thought that this would be where the Bulldogs' run ended. Instead, they delivered the most complete performance of the season, dismantling the Raiders 25-6 in a preliminary final. And suddenly, the forgotten team stood in the grand final against the minor premiers, the glamour side, Manly, a team that had only lost 2 games all year. Packed with stars, the heavy favourite, their pathway to the decider was smooth. They were arrogant, polished, expected to steamroll. But the Bulldogs had something Manly couldn't predict, an inner edge, a collective defiance. From the opening whistle, they set the tone. Every carry, every tackle, every second was contested. The kind of match where the clock slows and you feel every heartbeat. Terry Lamb was even sin-binned in the 6th minute, but that didn't rattle the side. They defended as though their lives depended on it. And when Glenn Hughes scored what appeared to be a 7th tackle, the controversy only fueled belief. Jason Hetherington threw himself into every shot. Matthew Ryan orchestrated under pressure, defence that turned into attack in a heartbeat, and Terry Lamb, he led with fire in his eyes. Manly stars couldn't breathe. Their lines were jammed, their precision unravelled, and their frustration mounted. Missed tackles, errors, uncertainty, and Canterbury pounced. The Bulldogs scored 11 unanswered points in the second half, and when the siren sounded, the scoreboard told the story. 79 minutes. That's all it took. The scoreboard that shook the world. Canterbury 17, Manly 4. It wasn't just a victory, it was an annihilation of expectation. The Bulldogs had done the impossible. A team that had limped in at 6 had dismantled every heavyweight side in their path. They weren't supposed to be there, but there they were. Champions. For Terry Lamb, a lifelong campaigner, it was a crowning victory. For the rest of the team, it was a signifier of their 1995 will and determination. Triumph, not in spite of everything, because of everything. The doubts, the resentments, the wounds of near misses. Because when the world is writing you off, that's when the fight becomes your story. Triumph always carries the weight, and for the Bulldogs, that would be the foundation, the turning point of what would become an epic saga of darkness and redemption. It was the triumph that would define the disaster and redemption still to come. "1995 ended in triumph, against all odds. The Bulldogs had scaled the mountain, but triumph never lasts forever, and for Canterbury, the glory was followed by turbulence, a storm that would not only test their football, but the very soul of the club. Terry Lamb had planned to retire after the 1995 Grand Final, but when the Super League War tore the roster apart, Jason Smith, Jim Dimmick and Dean Pay all defecting to Parramatta, Lamb stayed one more year to steady the ship. It was a selfless final campaign from a captain guiding a fractured side. The rebranded Sydney Bulldogs reverted quietly back to Canterbury Bankstown. Injuries mounted, consistency vanished, and the premiership defence they were famous for fell away. By year's end, the Bulldogs sat at 10th place on the ladder, a sobering fall from champions to strugglers. It was a warning shot that this wouldn't be a dynasty, it would be a decade of peaks and crashes. The code finally split. Canterbury joined the Rebel Super League as the Canterbury Bankstown Bulldogs, one of 10 clubs in a breakaway league that divided fans, broadcasters, and even families. They finished 4th out of 10th, losing 15-14 in a semi-final to Penrith, a brave but bittersweet campaign. Super League promised global exposure, new rules, corporate polish, but crowds were thin and costs had ballooned. Within months, the grand experiment was bleeding money and goodwill, and by 1997, peace was declared. The ARL News Limited had struck a deal, one competition, the NRL from 1998. Super League in Australia was dead after one season, and Canterbury returned to the fold where they belong. Under new coach Steve Folkes, the Bulldogs re-emerged. They scraped into the finals from 9th place, then they turned September into a theatre. Down 18-2 with 10 to go against Parramatta, Canterbury produced one of the greatest comebacks in rugby league history, going on to win 32-20 in extra time. They surged into the grand final, only to fall 38-12 to a dominant Brisbane. But belief was reborn. Folkes had forged a side built on discipline, defence and faith, and the club had found its bite once again. This was a season that reminded Canterbury who they were. They had lost a trophy, yes, but they had found their identity. 1999 brought stability. The Bulldogs finished 5th and fell 24-22 to Melbourne in a semi-final heartbreaker. Willie Talau had cemented himself as a strike centre and Steve Folkes' leadership was growing. Off the field, the NRL pushed for club rationalisation, a drive that created St George Illawarra and the West Tigers mergers. Speculation swirled around other Sydney clubs, but Canterbury refused to merge, standing tall and independent amongst all the uncertainty. The 2000 season was transitional. The Bulldogs had slipped to 11th, but the future was arriving. A young Braith Anasta made his debut, Hazem El Masri topped the club's tries, and veteran Daryl Halligan closed out his career as Canterbury's leading point scorer with 204 points scored across his career. It was a quiet season of reset, the beginnings of a new core built on discipline and belief. The Bulldogs roared back to finish 2nd after the regular season, only to lose 23-22 to the Dragons and 52-10 to Cronulla. That scoreline hurt, but so did the doubt about their consistency. Off the field, something rare happened. As South Sydney fought for readmission into the NRL, Canterbury supporters and club figures joined a Bankstown fundraiser to help the cause. Old rivals stood side by side, showing that rugby league was bigger than tribal lines. In a fractured era, Canterbury showed heart, a trait that would become tested like never before. Under captain Steve Price, the Bulldogs won 17 games straight and looked untouchable. Then came the bombshell. An NRL audit uncovered systematic salary cap breaches totaling over $2 million across the year 2000 to 2002. It was no clerical error, it was deliberate, structured, and hidden. The punishment was so severe, all 37 competition points erased and a $500,000 fine. From minor premiership favourites to wooden spooners overnight. Fans felt betrayed, players bewildered, and the NRL made an example that would echo for decades. Sponsors walked, crowds thinned, and the Bulldogs' name was dragged through the mud. Club legend Steve Morter was brought back to help rebuild trust and integrity. The players led by Price, El Masri and Anasta, they vowed that they'd never let the club be defined by that scandal. The fallout was immediate and brutal. Executives sacked, staff replaced, reputation shattered. Steve Folks kept the locker room together, turning humiliation into motivation. Players fronted cameras, faced booing crowds, and apologised to a hurt fan base. Inside Belmore, the mantra changed. No excuses, no secrets, no surrender. That siege mentality became their identity, fuel for 2003's revival and the redemption of 2004. The club had been broken, but not beaten. Canterbury stormed back into contention, finishing third and reaching the preliminary final against the Roosters. They fell 28-18, one step short, but the transformation was undeniable. El Masri's accuracy, Price's leadership, Anasta's maturity, this was a team reborn from the ashes. It wasn't redemption yet, but you could feel it coming. From 1996 to 2003, Canterbury had seen it all. Triumph, disaster, and defiance. But the next chapter would symbolise the redemption to come. From disgrace to defiance. 2 seasons after losing everything, Canterbury walked into 2004 under a microscope. Headlines stalked them, critics circled, and every misstep threatened to drag them back under. Inside Belmore, a different story was forming. One about accountability, resolve, and a football team that refused to be defined by its worst day. This isn't a fairy tale, it was a pressure test. We start 2004 not with highlights, but with headlines. So let's face them. February 2004. On a pre-season trip to Coffs Harbour, serious allegations against unnamed Bulldogs players triggered a high-profile police investigation and weeks of front-page coverage. In late April, after reviewing the brief, authorities were advised that there was insufficient evidence. Police confirmed no charges would be laid. Legally, the case ended. Publicly, it didn't. The club still acted on conduct. Breach notices and fines for behavioural breaches tied to the trip. Senior staff changes, players fronted cameras and were told to let their football speak. The reputational hit was real and it followed Canterbury into round 1. Legally, it ended. Publicly, let's be honest, it didn't. So the question is here, can you play your way out of a scandal? Canterbury smashed Para 48-14 at Telstra Stadium, a clinical reset under a storm of headlines. Sonny Bill Williams, only 18 years old, debuted. Hazem El Masri turned territory into points. A week later against Cronulla, they beat them 24-20 at the showground, proof that the opener wasn't just theatre, it was a process. But it wasn't all smooth sailing. In round 3, the Roosters belted Canterbury 35-0 at the Sydney Football Stadium, a painful reminder that would last for months. After the round 4 bye, the Dogs steadied, beating Manly 28-26 and then the Warriors 24-18 a week later. The lesson? You don't ride form into September, you build it. Across rounds 7 to 12, they went 4-2. They beat Souths 34-8, they beat the Broncos 25-18, but they were thrashed by Newcastle 32-6. It was okay though because they hit back at the Dragons the next round 38-12. But the hinge came on June the 4th. The Bulldogs thrashed the Roosters 40-12 at Telstra Stadium. The same opponent flipped the script with line speed and last tackle discipline. That night reset the belief and the season's narrative. That night, Flip the script. Same opponent, different Canterbury. From here on out, discipline beats the noise. Rounds 15 to 23 turned into a tear. They beat the Raiders, the Cowboys, Manly, the Storm, Sharks, the Tigers, the Panthers, the Cowboys again, and the Broncos. Their pattern: win the middle, finish to the corners, and suffocate with repeats. Tonga, a strike consistent, Mason and O'Mealy breaking through lines, and Nasta and Sherwin owning field position. They were briefly first but settled to second. A trip to Melbourne where they beat them 22 to 12 set the tempo for the battle to come. Then they slammed the door on Newcastle 52 to 6 and the Warriors 54 to 10. With a regular season finish, they came second behind the Roosters, with their setbacks absorbed and their systems calibrated. North Queensland arrived fearless and precise, forcing Canterbury to play from behind. The Cowboys finished their sets better and turned it into a 7-try shootout that broke rhythm. The tape didn't lie. The tempo and the discipline had to lift. The response was ruthless. Repeat sets, edge execution. Jonathan Thurston scored twice. El Masri, Patton, Ryan and Tonga all crossed, with Brett Sherwin kicking a field goal. Melbourne found some moments, but they were drowned under line speed and a territorial squeeze. Statement made, belief restored. Against the defending premiers, Canterbury played the moment. Hazem El Masri completed a hat-trick. Braithen Astor and Rennie Matur also crossed. 5 El Masri goals pushed the margin, and a pivotal Reece West Sinbin swung field position. The Dogs piled on points, decide a set, but at a cost. Steve Price's knee ruled him out, so Andrew Ryan had to take the armband. Price is out, Ryan is in. 80,000 with their hearts in their throats. One game to change the story. The grand final, Sydney Roosters versus the Canterbury Bulldogs. Date, October 3rd, 2004. Venue, Telstra Stadium. Minor premiers, Roosters. Stand-in captain, Andrew Ryan. The opening half went Sydney's way. Their kicking game was sharp and their yardage was clean. They led 13 to 6 at half-time after tries from Chris Walker and Anthony Melicello. Canterbury needed ruck control and territory or their night would slip. The Bulldogs returned with steel. Sets finished to corners, contact one in the middle, and then the moment. Early in the second half, Matt Utai struck, and in the 53rd minute, Hazem El Masri finished on the right. The video referee checked a potential double movement and awarded it. El Masri's conversion actually misses. The Bulldogs still lead 16-13 though. 16-13. Now it's trench work. Kick to the corners, win contact, believe. Willie Mason, the eventual Clive Churchill medalist, and Mark O'Mealy rolled through the meters. Sherwin and Anasta kicked the Roosters into corners, and outside backs chased like forwards. Sydney poked through Melicello and wing, but Canterbury's line marshalled by Ryan held shape. With seconds left, Michael Crocker broke through the Bulldogs line at halfway. Andrew Ryan, a back rower wearing the night on his shoulders, made a desperate tackle that ended the final raid. Siren, Bulldogs 16, Roosters 13. Mason lifted the medal, and Steve Price, in civilian street clothes and his Bulldogs jersey, lifted the trophy. Redemption isn't about erasing the past, it's carrying it and winning anyway. When you're at your lowest, you really learn who you really are, and Canterbury in 2004 showed that. They went from scandal to redemption, and they were not defined by that scandal. And believe me, there's plenty more to this Bulldog story, but that's a story for another day. Yo, if you are watching this right now, I'm doing this ad-lib off the top of my head, so I want to say thank you for getting all the way to the end of Act 3, and if you enjoyed it, please consider giving us a sub. If you're following us on TikTok, please follow us on TikTok, follow us on YouTube, on Instagram or whatever, and I'll have more coming, and maybe, just maybe, we might do your team next. How about that? All right, love yous, have a good day.